Hey guys, it's Delora Dabbles here, and I have a book review for you guys. This is Morbid Magic by Tomas Prower. I really enjoyed this book. I did. It has just so many goodies in it. We're going to start with the table of contents, though, as I always do. I will say, though, that I'm disappointed in Llewellyn. Because I have... Oh, are they not wanting to come out now? Maybe I pressed them into the glue enough to where they re-adhered. They must have re-adhered. But the first few sections of the table of contents actually came out of this book. And I did my best to press it back in and to clamp it, so maybe that actually worked. But yes, some of the pages fell out. Anywho, he has this, as you will see, and I will explain the organization of this book as I show you. So you can pause to read if my commentary is getting in the way. But as you can see, he will have a part which covers an entire region, and then each chapter breaks down different cultures in that region. And then as he goes chapter by chapter, you also get a deities and legends section, and that is in alphabetical order. And then at the end of the part, the regional area, you will get a magical community section that has, personal stories of people within that magical community talking about death and their spirituality. Either, how their spirituality helped them overcome their grief or help them through their grieving period. Some of them are how they found their spirituality through death. And basically everything in between as well. As you can see, he really does cover quite a lot in this book. Quite a lot. Tomas Prower is also a mortician himself. And so I feel like everything that he had to say was just so poignant and to death and the grieving process, but also very down to the nitty-gritty. So especially whenever he talks about Egyptian funerary practices and how they did their embalming, he gets into the actual meat of how they actually did the embalming and stuff like that. Tomas Prower also does not pull any punches when it comes to how our society is very detached from death and how we are never really allowed to see death. The only dead person I have ever seen that was not already embalmed was a partner's grandfather in the hospital, and he was very freshly dead, but it was still very odd to see a dead person without all that makeup on. And I will say, here in Mobile, our morticians must be next level, because they really do look like they're asleep. I wrote a short story in college. I'm going to make this story quick, but I mentioned how in the casket she just looked like she was asleep, and she would walk up and get away at any moment, and my professor was like, that is very inauthentic. That's not how dead people look. And I was like, do y'all have really shit morticians out here? Because our morticians must have been really freaking good or something. And I think that they are very good at their job. At least the mortician who did the embalming on my Nana did a very exceptional job. And you will notice that in big cities, even the doctors are shit. I mean, I hate having had a checkup in Houston ever. And I eventually started getting my checkups here in Mobile with my family doctor, even though I didn't live in Mobile anymore. I lived in Houston. I did not like Houston doctors because they were shit at their jobs. They just had such a high volume of people coming in and out, and I guarantee you their morticians are no different. So I really hate that teacher dared to doubt the abilities of the morticians here, because they do have a lower volume. They can take more care with each patient, just like doctors do. Anywho, I digress. But yes, Tomas Prower did hit the nail on the head. We do not deal with death nearly enough. So much so that a lot of teenagers, because I listen to true crime podcasts all the time, they think that they can actually burn a body and it will just disintegrate. No, there's stuff left over after you cremate a body. Fire will not get rid of everything. Even and he talks about that too. He gets very in depth into it. You still have bone chips. and stuff left. Splinters, bone splinters and chips and all kinds of bone fragments. And that's in a giant incinerator. Those are what's ground up to make the ashes. Those aren't, they're ashes mixed with crushed bone. It's bone powder, basically. Yes. Anywho. Don't dispose of a dead body by burning it is my point. Also, don't kill people, but whatever. I don't want to be cremated. I actually wanted to have a sky burial, but because of reading this book, I also found out sky burials are illegal in America. That was my plan, right? I was going to tell my parents to just leave me out in the woods, but that's illegal. You can't do that. And I did not know that until he was like, yeah, that's not legal in most countries. And I didn't realize that it was a Tibetan practice either. Well, it is largely regarded as a Tibetan practice. I came across the concept of sky burial by researching a lot of the nomadic tribes around Göbekli Tepe, because anthropology. But anyway, great book. He goes through basically every major culture in the world, and I love how, if you notice in the table of contents, he leaves North America to the indigenous peoples. He does not talk about North America in a modern context, as in there's Christianity and paganism that exists there, right? In a Western context, he leaves everything where it naturally would have been pre-modern colonization. I say modern colonization because colonization happened throughout history, right? But he leaves out modern European colonization and leaves all of the cultures to their continents as they would have been, right? So he doesn't talk about Christianity in Australia or Christianity in the Americas. He only talks about Christianity on the European continent, right? And he only talks about Islam in the Middle Eastern continent as well. I really like how careful he was with other cultures. He also talks about mortuary cannibalism, and I believe it was on New Guinea. And he dealt with it in a very compassionate and caring way, in a very non-judgmental way either. So there's only two things that I noticed that he gets a little bit parentheses about, which is pollution and patriarchy, right? And that is the only time he even comes off as even slightly judgmental, is whenever it comes to pollution and patriarchy. And I feel that in my giblets, because I get upset about patriarchy and pollution as well. But anywho, yes, he handled the mortuary cannibalism very beautifully, and it made a lot of sense to me. The tribe that practices mortuary, well, there's two tribes. They practice it for very different reasons, right? And so that was also very fascinating. The first tribe practiced it because of, the decomposing of the body would affect the spirit. Again, it's the ancient Egyptian belief that what happens to the physical body affects what happens to the spiritual body in the afterlife. That's why they did the embalming. Well, that's the same exact reason why the tribe in New Guinea ate their ancestors who passed away, because they did not want the pollution of human decomp to affect the spirit. They did not want the spirit to decompose and corrupt the way that the physical human body does. So they believe that they save their ancestors in the spirit world by doing that. Now, the other one is a lot more like a witch hunt, and you're going to have to read more to learn more. But again, excellent book. He also talks about, there's a lot of fascinating stuff in this book. Yes, there's takeaways. There are takeaways. So the ancient Egyptian takeaway, for instance, is, what do you want to happen to your body when you die? This whole book, I feel like, prepares you to leave this earth. Like, if you know anybody who's dying, I don't want to get this morbid with it, but this would be a book that actually gives them a lot of peace, right? It might give them some ideas on how they want their relatives to celebrate their lives, right? Because in Ghana, I had to Google it. He encourages you to Google coffin art in Ghana. Some of these coffins are giant high heels. Some of them are giant cell phones. I mean, these coffins rival anything I've seen here in Mobile at a Mardi Gras parade, and that is saying a lot. These coffins are just absolutely beautiful. Some of them look like airplanes, and they don't look like coffins with airplane wings. They look like airplanes. They look like shoes. Okay, like, beautiful. Google it. Google coffins in Ghana. Like, you will be absolutely blown away. Anywho, I say anywho too much in this video. Whoopsie. But he also has the magical community, which I described in the table of contents. I will say I am 2 or 3% bothered by the fact that the African diasporic communities didn't share. So he had to use what he called campfire stories, which would be the religious stories passed down in those traditions, right? So the sub-Saharan and African diasporic communities did not have anyone from that community that came forward and shared. Now, these are closed practices, and that could be why they might not have felt comfortable. He does say that some people expressed interest, but never got back to him, right? It could be that it's a closed practice, or it could be another reason. I would like to know that reason because, again, like I said, it feels like a stamp of approval when that community comes forward and shares. In this book, it means that they trust the author. So I want to know whether or not these possible contributors decided not to contribute simply because it's a closed practice, or if they didn't trust the author, because those are two incredibly different things. Or if they were just in a time in their lives where they were just too busy to get it done. That could be a possibility too. But I would really have liked more transparency on why they didn't get back to him. And Thomas Prower probably doesn't know why they wouldn't have. Or the real reasons why they wouldn't have. So that section not having the stamp of approval bothers me about 2 or 3%. But it certainly doesn't take anything away from the book, because I actually read that chapter, that regional part several times, trying to comb through it and be like, was there anything that could have turned them off? And I really do think that it was because it's a closed practice and they just don't want to share it. So, but anywho, again, he does not pull punches about anything about how we deal with death. But he also handles it very respectfully in all of these families' traditions. But however, in East Asia, he does put a lot of, he points out patriarchal concepts in parentheses and explains that these patriarchal concepts come from Confucianist philosophy and things like that. So it's stated more as matter of fact, but it definitely kind of took me out of the book a little bit, because I was like, well, of course it's patriarchal. Like, a lot of cultures around the world are more patriarchal. But I guess he just didn't want people to read it and be offended that women were constantly being put in subservient roles. Maybe he felt like he had to justify on behalf of the community. I don't know. But it did take me out a little bit. But all in all, this was an excellent book. It was excellently researched and excellently written. And I will say, guys, let me find a footnote for y'all, because this dude does footnote references like nobody else. So you will have a numbered note, and then you will have the footnote with the citation at the bottom. Some pages have like 4 or 5 citations, and it can get very, very crowded down there. But yeah, he has all of these citations, and then in the back, the bibliography has every citation he uses throughout the book, again in alphabetical order, right? So if you want to find something by theme, you want to search through the book and look at the footnotes for every chapter and every culture. But if you can remember the last name of the author, but not the title of the book, then it would be easier to look through the back. So there's actually like a 2-way identification of sources in this book. You can go to the back, or you can read the footnotes as you progress through thematically. So I really, really appreciate that. That is very academically minded of him to do. Again, I really do feel like this book kind of prepares you for death and gets you comfortable with the concepts of death. It is reassuring in a lot of ways that, like, you have options. You don't have to be embalmed, right? Because I don't want to be embalmed, but I also don't want to be burned because I want to give back to the community, right? The earth, right? But I don't want to be interred in a cemetery where everyone else's embalming fluids have leaked and polluted the place. I want to be buried somewhere where other people are also buried non-embalmed, so that that land can be used later for agriculture and things like that. Definitely a lot of our practices in America are bad for the environment, but I never suspected mortuary practices were until Tomas Prower did it. This guy is a mortician. So for him to be so like blatant about pollution in this book, and our Western embalming practices being a big part of that pollution, was a surprise to me. But I was also very reassured to find that we had options. I can't do a sky burial, which sucks, but I can at least not put embalming fluids in the ground and make sure that my family knows not to put embalming fluids in my body to seep into the ground, right? All of the takeaways that he has, if you do all the takeaways in this book, I think you'll be more comfortable passing on. And I think that a lot of us believe that because we're so young, it won't happen. But if there's one thing that I think the pandemic taught all of us, it's that anything could come and wipe you out. Something as small as a virus can ruin your entire life, and end your life. And I think that now more than ever, this book was published in 2019 also, and I can't believe I didn't find it sooner. This book has been out for like 3 years now, and I'd never heard of it. So I really want to spread the word and get more people to read it, because as far as my spiritual practice goes, I haven't thought about funerary traditions. I spend a lot of time wondering, where we go when we die, but I've never really thought of what am I going to do with my physical body and my physical things when I'm gone. So this kind of brought a more practical aspect to my spiritual practice in regards to death. And I hope that you guys are inspired to read this book. It's very interesting. I love other cultures. I think that he handled his research and his talking of other cultures in a very compassionate way. It was not ethnocentric. It was very much an observe and report type thing. And I hope that if you guys pick it up, you like it too. If you did like this book and you read it, I would love to know your thoughts on this book in the comments section down below. And definitely like and subscribe to my channel if you like my occult book reviews. And until next time, happy dabbling and bye-bye.